So these are stories I wrote during my creative writing program. This is actually a one-pager of feedback that my professor, writing teacher, gave me to fix a story I called The Room. And editing these stories was the hardest, or one of the hardest parts, because you go over and over again and again until you get to a stage where it's in a form where you are semi-satisfied, because you're never satisfied with a story. And editing is a very overwhelming process. It's hard, and it's not as fun as when you get the initial idea for a story and you start writing it. You don't have that inspiration anymore, and going over the same sentences, the same story over and over again can feel a bit daunting. So in this video, I want to talk about how to make that process just a little bit more fun. And I'm going to convince you that the rewriting happens in actual edits, not in the first draft of writing. So without further ado, hi friends, my name is Mohammed and I'm a writer, and in this channel we explore tips and habits that make writing and reading part of our busy lives so that we can write our own stories, stay creative, be clear-minded, and just enjoy the whole thing. First tip to make editing less overwhelming starts in the actual first draft. It's treating the first draft as a first draft. So no editing during the first draft. You write it as soon as possible, as fast as possible. Once you get the idea, the spark, the motivation, the momentum that you get when you discover that you have a story to write, you just go full on steam and write it fast. Do not look back, do not edit while you are writing, because that will make the completing of the story itself a lot harder. I'm of that camp that believe that the first draft is the discovery draft, is where you are just getting to know the characters, getting to know what the story is about, where the setting of the story and the things that make the story worthy read. But if you turn on that perfectionist mindset and you start editing while you are writing, it will make the editing process or the completing process a lot harder. Once you complete that first draft, and this is the second tip, is take a break from your writing. You want to go back into reading the first draft that you just wrote with fresh eyes. You don't want to go back to it while you are still thinking about the parts that are not working about it, the messy part that you think that you should have fixed while you are writing it. You want to go into it with fresh eyes. This is one way to do it. The other way is to actually give it to some friends. And when you give it to friends, when you give it to writer friends to give you feedback, then you will technically also take a break from it, because you are not going to fix the story while other people are giving you feedback on. Because if you start fixing the parts that they're gonna say that are nice, then you're gonna go back and you're gonna have to fix those again. It just makes the process a lot messier. So reward yourself, take a break, give it to people, and once you get it back, or once you go back after a few days of break, is when the editing process starts. So this is tip number 3. Start big. When you are editing a first draft of a story after getting feedback or after taking a break, what you want to do is thinking about it as in terms of passes. Each pass of reading, or each pass of the editing process, you will fix a thing or two. You don't want to tackle every single problem the story has from the first go. It will feel overwhelming, you will make it even more messy, and you will have no sense of direction of where you are starting and where you want to go. But what you want to do is read the whole thing at once without a pen or paper, and without comments. Just read it, get a bird's eye view of what the story is about, where it's working about it, what is not working, what do you like, what do you not like, what is surprising and what is dull. And then what you want to do in your second read is go with a pen and make side comments. Typically what I would do after I do side comments and I flip through the last page, and I will just write, just free writing, all the things that I've noticed that I liked about the story that I didn't like, and the things that I want to change. This does not necessarily give me a plan to like an exact checklist of when I go back to the editing process, I'm fixing very specific things, but it sort of gives my mind the ability to give a physical existence to all the thoughts that revolved around my brain or inside my brain while reading the story, because technically that will be the reader's experience. And what I want to do is smooth that out, fix the things that need to be fixed, and leave the things that are already working. So in terms of passes, maybe the first pass, I'm just thinking the big picture. Does this story have a problem or a dilemma or a conflict that is worthy of reading, worthy of solving? Big picture things. Another thing that you might want to focus on, does this character feel like they resonate with readers based on what they have presented themselves with? And then you can go specifics. So things that you do not worry about in the beginning is, the color of the couch that the main character sits in one afternoon. This is not something that you should be worrying about. This is not the thing that you fix first. Start big picture, big problems. Structure the main character, and then you can go into details like the dialogue feels real or feels tangible, feels like it can be a thing that it doesn't alert the reader is that is phony. Then you can go into color, smells, and all of the other things. The fourth tip is to cut ruthlessly. You have to have the guts, the bravery to cut the things that you love. Like Stephen King says, kill your darlings. So the sentences that you love, the characters that tend to have a soft spot for you when you are reading them, things that the main character said that you think was witty or smart but do not make sense for the story, then you cut it. Your job as a writer is to discover it, is to excavate the story from within so that it can present itself in the best, clearest form so that the reader can enjoy it. If we are just thinking about how we can be, sound writerly or sound fancy or smart on the page, then we will not develop or create stories that actually matter to the real world. They will just be stuff that we can post in our blog and nobody will read. Our job as writers is to clarify the world from our perspective to other readers. And the hope is that some people will find the perspective that you are clarifying, the world that you are building, resonate with them. They will feel it relates to them and they will become a fan of your work. Otherwise, writing for the sake of sounding like we are writers, it's just not a worthy cause. You will not make a ton of money as a writer. You will not be super famous. So might as well do it for all the right things, right? For writing's sake. The fifth tip is prioritize clarity and consistency. A story is almost like a spider web. It's interconnected and it has this effect once it has some sort of clarity and consistency that a reader, when they read your story, literally lose themselves into the story themselves. When we read a good book, we forget that we are doing the action. We forget that we are reading, and we tend to feel like we are experiencing the same events or talking to the same characters that the main character is talking to. George Sanders says that a job of a writer is to write a story where it feels like he is or she is the main driver on a motorcycle with those, side seats, and the reader sitting in that side seat. And so the way you go about writing a story is that you making turns. They can be sharp, they can be dull, you could be going fast, you can be slowing down, but that seat or the writer in that seat is still maintaining their place and they're not falling down. You can't or you shouldn't make too of a sharp turn or make an inconsistent action based on what you have already told us about a main character that throws off the reader of the seat, because that will break that dreamlike flow that they enter when they are reading. And what we want to create is that world where it feels like a flowy stage from beginning to end. And the way you do this is by reading and rereading and editing and editing and editing again. And the more passages you go through, you will have a meter in your mind that tells you, all right, this is in the green. This is sort of consistent with everything that the story is trying to be. And then you will get to a part where it will feel funny, it will feel offhanded, it will feel I don't know what's wrong with this part, but I just feel like strong. And then you have to make a decision whether to just cut it off if the story still survives in its shape after it's off, or maybe it's a very important part but it needs to be replaced, changed, reworded, or whatever the case might be. The sixth tip is spend a lot of time in the beginning. The hook of the story or the beginning of the story is the most important part of the story. We tend to think about maybe the climax or the way we develop the conflict or the character reaction to a certain incident because we have been waiting for their reaction for a very, very long time within the story. But actually, the very first maybe paragraph of the story is the most important, because this is where you're going to capture the reader and give them a promise that if you continue to read this, you will be rewarded. You will get something out of it, whether it is a transformation, a perspective, a change of state. You will enter the story, you will come out on the other side different sometimes as the main character. And a lot of the time what I've noticed about my own writing is that I'll write a beginning of a story because I feel like this is where the story begins, and then when I'm doing the rereading, the editing, I would see this part maybe in the third, fourth page that I feel like, well, this is such an interesting part of the story, incident, something the character said, the way maybe I described the world, that I feel like this is actually the beginning. And so once I shifted to the beginning, I have to shift other things to make the story make sense again. And that will be the most powerful part. So sometimes your beginning does not come until you build enough stamina, enough knowledge of the story, so it comes later. So all you have to do is find it and then push it to the front. And sometimes it takes a lot of rewriting. And I just want to say that half of editing is a mindset. We have to think about editing as the funnest part of the writing process, because when we are in this discovery stage, when we are writing the first draft, yes, it feels exciting, it feels like we are, you know, discovering something new, and there's a lot of motivation, there's a lot of inspiration in it. But the actual writing, where you can add your voice, where you feel like you're more in control of what the story becomes, or you have the sense that you are creating, molding the thing that is in front of you for people to appreciate. That's where we have to start, sort of teach ourselves to like it more. Because if you have the stamina to rewrite, edit, it will give you a better chance of publishing, writing better stories, and just overall becoming a better writer. I hope these tips are helpful. I can't promise that they will make editing or writing a little bit easier, but I think the steps or mindset shift will give you the opportunity to view editing in a different light, and hopefully it will help you edit a story that has been sitting down, maybe unfinished or finished, and you haven't gone through it again after you finish the first draft. Go back to it, reread it, edit that story. Is probably calling you. I mentioned George Saunders in this video, and if you've enjoyed it and watched this far, then you will probably enjoy my video on his book, A Swim in the Pond in the Rain, that goes in depth about the editing process, what it means, and how to do it in a way where you are making the story better line by line. It's sort of like a craft class more than a book, really. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and keep writing.